Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be truly afraid? In today's video, we're diving deep into the unsettling world of childhood fears. You'll hear a story from my own past that still haunts me to this day, and perhaps you'll find a bit of your own fears reflected in it. As a child, I was terrified of nighttime, and my fears intensified when I was moved into a small, narrow room of my own at the age of 8. The room felt suffocating and dark, with a solitary window that seemed hesitant to let in light. One night, I heard strange noises coming from the bottom bunk, which sent me into a state of panic. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination or my pet cat, but soon realized that something sinister was stirring. The noise grew louder and more violent, and I felt my heart racing as I scanned the darkness, too afraid to move or call for help. When my mother rushed in and turned on the light, the noise stopped. But the feeling of unease lingered. I didn't tell her what was happening, fearing that if I spoke of it, the entity would return. The experience left me shaken, and even as an adult, I still feel a sense of dread whenever I think about that night. The word that kept escaping my mind was eternal, and it's as if the terror of that night is etched into my mind forever. As I lay in bed, I noticed my unwelcome visitor had stopped moving, replaced by a slow, rhythmic breath. I shuddered, hoping it would leave. The house was dark and silent, with only the breathing of my unseen bunkmate. I feared the unknown and wanted it to go away. The thing moved, driven by awareness, and I lay there, my eyes filled with tears, imagining what horror would await me. It began to touch the wooden slats of my mattress, and I let out a cry as it prodded angrily, making it feel like fingers stuck into my side. The next day, I noticed an old armchair at the foot of my bed, which I thought might have been moved while I slept. On the second night, I heard a quiet, rhythmical breathing sound, but I assumed it was just my imagination. As I lit the room, the sound ceased. The armchair still troubled me, so I turned it around. The third night, I awoke to the sound of the bed creaking like something had moved. When I looked around, everything seemed normal. Suddenly, I saw the outline of a person sitting in the armchair. The first movement chilled me, and as it shifted to face me, I knew it was real. I screamed, and my mother and brother rushed in, turning on the light. I stared at the empty chair, unwilling to acknowledge them. Despite remaining in the room for only a few more days, I saw nothing else. In my next sleep, I awoke to the sound of heavy breathing in my ear. I spent the rest of the night on the couch. 2 years later, I slept soundly in my new home, but during a nightmare, I felt their presence again. Waking, I found myself in a pitch-black room, the air stifling, and the sound of the watchers breathing filling my ears. As a child, I was tormented by a malevolent entity that would invade my room, suffocating me with its breath and long, thin fingers. Despite my attempts to rationalize the experience, I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom. After sharing my traumatic childhood memories, I experienced an overwhelming sense of unease, accompanied by a creeping feeling of being watched. I decided to confront my fears and visited the old house where it all happened. Upon arrival, I noticed the house was unoccupied, yet I could see signs of recent occupancy, and dust covered everything. As I approached the back of the house, I felt a chill and saw spiders' webs. Through a dirty window, I glimpsed a room that looked eerily familiar, but more unsettling was the sensation of being watched and the feeling that the entity might still be inside. Despite my attempts to rationalize the encounter, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something evil still lurked, waiting to strike. As I opened my eyes, I saw an empty bedroom, releasing a sigh of relief that everything seemed normal. I had always been anxious, but after revisiting my childhood home and climbing the old sycamore tree, I felt empowered. However, when I discovered a toy soldier in the hollow, I was horrified to find the remains of a small animal. Despite the unpleasant encounter, I felt in control and began driving home, but quickly became anxious and started speeding. As I approached my town, the anxiety diminished, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. Returning home, I sat in silence for a moment, determined to get back to normal and dismiss my childhood fears. But as I sat there, something in the back seat breathed on me, and I felt a cold grip on my shoulder. As the moon rises outside, I, having just moved into a new home with my wife Mary, began to feel a sense of unease. I saw a strange figure hiding behind the curtains, its laboring breathing and murmurs filling the air. Desperate to confront the creature, I slowly drew the curtain back, revealing a gaunt, emaciated figure with brittle bones and a distended stomach. The creature's whispers seemed to come from multiple languages, and I felt terror and pity towards it. As I prepared to remove the creature's shrouded protection, it uttered three terrifying words. "Look behind you!" And I turned to find Mary being attacked by the creature. In a desperate bid to save her, I tried to strangle the creature, but its strength proved too great. The creature tore out a fistful of Mary's hair and disappeared, leaving Mary believing that I was the one who attacked her. Heartbroken, I realized I had lost Mary forever and decided to take matters into my own hands, determined to kill the creature before it harms anyone else. I knew I was about to face death, but I was willing to pay the price to be rid of the corrupt and perverted force that had tormented me for years. I waited in the car, preparing for the night's events. When I heard the sound of my unwanted passenger, I knew it was time to act. I waited for it to attack, letting it feed and revel in my fear before slowly plunging the car into the dark water below. As we approached the cliff edge, I saw my chance and pushed the creature into the back seat. We went over the edge, hitting the water with tremendous force. I managed to escape with my life, but my tormentor was not so lucky. It struggled to free itself from the water, its shrieks and screams echoing through the night. I curled my fist and hit the thing's face, injuring it further. As I prepared to drown it, it grabbed my hand and I felt numbness spreading. I thought of Mary and my family, feeling a sense of sadness and despair. As I struggled with the thing, I noticed its leg was trapped and I saw my chance to escape. I pushed my way out and threatened to leave it to die in the water, but it wanted to drown me too. It grabbed me and we fought until I managed to free myself. I walked away wounded and eventually returned home to find a trail of footprints leading to my bed where it was waiting. I escaped again, but eventually it found me and I played dead. It crawled onto the bed and prodded my wound. I remained motionless as it spat on me and prodded my wound further. It then put its fingers in my mouth and I gagged. I rolled over, breaking free, and eventually escaped. I used ruse to distract it and poured gasoline on it, lighting it on fire. The police suspect me of murder and arson, but I'm writing this from a hotel room, feeling relieved that the thing is gone. Reflecting on experiences has helped the writer understand themselves better and potentially aid others in a similar situation.